You know, when you talk about pro wrestling in Canada, the number one territory and the most successful and the most productive, of course, was Stampede Wrestling. Now, Stampede Wrestling was a Canadian professional wrestling promotion based in Calgary. Now, for nearly 50 years, it was one of the main promotions in Western Canada and the Canadian prairies. It was originally established by Stu Hart in 1948, and the promotion competed with other promotions such as NWA All-Star Wrestling and Pacific Northwest Wrestling, and regularly ran events in Calgary's Victoria Pavilion, Ogden Auditorium, and the Stampede Corral between 48 and 84. Bought out by promoter Vince McMahon, the company was briefly run by the WWF before being sold back to the Hart family the following year. Run by Bruce Hart until January 1990, he and Ross Hart reopened the promotion in 1999 and began running events in the Alberta area. Along with this wrestling school known as the Dungeon, many of the promotion's former alumni became some of the most popular stars of the WWF and other American promotions during the 80s and 90s. The promotion produced one of the earliest televised professional wrestling programs, today considered a forerunner of today's WWE, that remained one of Calgary's most popular sports programs and eventually aired in over 50 countries. Now, the first run was in 48 to 84. Stu Hart and Al Oming started as Klondike Wrestling and held their first show on September 11, 1948 at the Sales Pavilion in Edmonton. It also became the NWA's Calgary territory in Canada. In May 51, they changed its name to Big Time Wrestling. In February 58, they introduced a version of the NWA International Tag Team title to replace the Alberta Tag Team title that was retired a year before, which was won by the Kalmakoffs. In 1959, Oming retired and Stu took full control of the territory. He also retired their version of the NWA Canadian Tag title. At 65, he changed the name of the promotion to Wildcat Wrestling. Finally, in August 67, he changed it to Stampede Wrestling, and the name stuck. In February 68, they created their own singles title, the Stampede North American Heavyweight title, which was won by the Mongolian Stomper, Archie Goldie. 4 years later, they retired their version of the NWA Canadian Heavyweight title. In June 78, they introduced the Stampede British Commonwealth Mid-Heavyweight title with Dynamite Kid as their inaugural champion during his first tour in North America. In 79, Stampede would bring back an old championship, the Stampede World Mid-Heavyweight title, first introduced in 59 before being quickly abandoned, with Dick Steinborn as champion. In 82, Stampede withdrew from the NWA. On December 2, 1983, a riot broke out at the Victoria Pavilion in Calgary during a match between Bret Hart, Davey Boy Smith, and Sonny Two Rivers against Bad News Allen, later Bad News Brown, the Stomper, and the Stomper's kayfabe son Jeff Goldie. Longtime Stampede announcer Ed Whalen reportedly became distraught during the riot, in which a woman was trampled, causing him to quit from the Stampede on air. Speaking of the events, he remarked, "We're starting to scare the patrons with his violence outside the ring, and I will not be associated with it anymore." The event led to Stampede Wrestling being banned from Calgary for 6 months by the city's Wrestling and Boxing Commission. In August 84, Stampede Wrestling was sold to the WWF. Of all the talent that the WWF took upon their purchase of Stampede, they took only 3 wrestlers, Bret Hart, Davey Boy Smith, and Dynamite Kid. Their last show was held on November 5, 84 in Vancouver as part of a WWF Stampede joint show. Now, when on October 28, 85, the WWF sold Stampede back to the Hart family, Bruce Hart took the reins, and by 86, the Calgary territory was given a shot at adrenaline with new talent such as Owen Hart, Brian Pillman, Chris Benoit, Biff Wellington, and Johnny Smith coming into tangle with Gama Singh and his Karachi Vice stable, which include Shinja Hashimoto, Gary Albright, and Mike Shaw, and the Viet Cong Express, which included a masked Hiroshi Hase. In December 87, they added a women's title, the IWA World Women's Championship, with Monster Ripper as their champion, but by January 89, that title was moved to Japan. Now, despite a valiant 4 years trying to resurrect the wrestling scene in Calgary to its former glory, Stampede officially shut down on December 18, 89. The closure stemmed from long-standing problems between Bruce Hart and Ed Whalen, producer Fred Mays constantly editing too much content off TV, and pay disputes within talent, mostly with TSN. Their final show before closing down was held in Edmonton on December 16th, with Larry Cameron defeating Bob Emery in the main event to retain the North American title. Now, despite Stampede officially closing down in December '89, there were several attempts to revive the promotion. The first attempt occurred around March '90 by Bruce Hart, but only lasted 3 months, running smaller towns outside Calgary and Edmonton due to a lack of approval by the Calgary Wrestling and Boxing Commission to promote shows. The next attempt was around December '91 by Abu Wazal, but only lasted a couple of weeks. Between July '95 and July '97, Bruce Hart promoted one-off shows periodically at the Rockford Rodeo in Rockyford Rodeo in Rockyford, Alberta. Now, on December 15, 1995, a special Stampede Wrestling tribute show was held at the Corral in Calgary, celebrating Stu Hart's life and career. It features several Stampede alumni, as well as talent from both the WWF and WCW. The main event saw Bret Hart successfully defend the WWF title against Davey Boy Smith. Now, in early '99, Bruce and Ross Hart reopened Stampede Wrestling, showcasing graduates from the Hart Dungeon Training School. However, only weeks after our first event, the promotion once again became inactive following the death of Owen Hart in May. Although considering closing the promotion, the Hart family continued to promote events, live events. 5 months later, began touring Western Canada. Although successful, the Harts were forced to cancel several tours in late 2001 and early 2002 due to a rival promotion backed by a Calgary businessman. The promotion also lost much of his roster due to his rival hiring away top stars. Now, in 2005, promoters Bill Bell and Devin Nicholson took over day-to-day operations for Stampede Wrestling. Now, during an event at the Spray Lake Sawmill Sportsplex in Cochrane, Alberta, Nicholson would face Abdullah the Butcher after a scheduled main event between Landstorm and Rhino was cancelled when Rhino failed to appear. At that same event, longtime tag team partners T.J. Wilson and Harry Smith faced each other in Smith's final match for the promotion before leaving for WWE. Bruce and Ross Hart sold Stampede Wrestling to Bill Bell in 2007, and the promotion ceased operations in April 2008. Now, Stampede's weekly shows were held mostly at the Victoria Pavilion in Calgary, with special events held at the Stampede Corral. Now, Stampede Wrestling was the basis for a long-running weekly sports broadcast produced in Calgary, showcasing many of the promotion's most popular wrestlers. Now hosted by Ed Whalen most of its run, which went from 57 to 89, the series was syndicated around the world, and reruns continue to be shown in some countries to this day. At the time Stampede was revived in '99, a second Stampede Wrestling TV series was attempted, hosted by Bad News Allen and play-by-play commentator Mario Ranallo, but it was short-lived and Whalen was not involved. Now, according to published reports, WWE currently controls Stampede's extensive tape library. In December 2015, the WWE Network began adding Stampede Wrestling shows to its Vault section. However, it was all removed a few days later after Bret Hart proved that he owned the rights to the footage of his matches. Now, again, Stampede Wrestling was famous for its dungeon, a professional wrestling school located in the basement of the Calgary mansion called the Hart House, which was the full home of the Hart family. Stu Hart and Mr. Hito were the main trainers in the dungeon. The school trained a number of ECW, WCW, WWE, and NJPW stars, including the Hart brothers, Mark Henry, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, Ricky Fuji, Hiroshi Hase, Ken Shamrock, Justin Credible, and of course, Sexton Hardcastle or Edge. Now, the Hart Dungeon, otherwise known simply as a dungeon, it was again created by Stu Hart, who was the patriarch again of the Hart wrestling family, and was known for creating some of the best wrestlers ever. Now, the room was located in the Hart family mansion basement and had a very low ceiling. For most of the duration of the room being used as training hall, there was a wrestling mat located on the floor without any ropes, which would be used for training students. Now, in our next podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about the legacy of the dungeon, and be afraid, I have some tall tales to tell that involve stretching, eye-popping, and all kind of good stuff. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the dungeon. Bye.